Hey guys, welcome to the Property Panel Podcast. You got myself, Jalen Hardcastle, here with co-host Josh Story. Today we're going to be going over interest versus inflation and how to invest, and we'll be diving in a little deeper over rent versus buying and property management as well.
I want to go ahead and thank our sponsors, our title sponsors, Collier Title. They do title work, deed prep, closings. You can find them in Brandenburg, E-Town, and Louisville. Their Brandenburg office phone number is 270-763-6589. Also want to go ahead and thank Supreme Lending, Chad Gooden and Garrett Greenwell for any of your lending needs. They do most loan types, including HELOCs and refis. They're located in E-Town at 326 North Mulberry Street. And if you're interested in a pre-approval, the link will be in the description, along with Cedar Hill Properties website. If you do get a pre-approval, or if you're just looking, all our listings and more will be on that website. I also want to go ahead and give a thanks to Custom Creations, Kurt Claycomb. He does laser engraving, and it's great for Christmas gifts, closing gifts, birthday gifts, and you can reach him at 270-668-6298. I guess we'll move into sponsor costs if someone wants to sponsor on this podcast.
Yeah, so basically, as you can see, we got our title sponsors, like Josh mentioned, Collier Title, Cedar Hill Properties, and Chad and Garrett from Supreme Lending. But we do want to offer weekly, monthly, and yearly sponsorship ads. So right now we're currently running a percentage off just because we're starting out. So we have 100 weekly, 300 monthly, and 3,000 yearly. Obviously, the more you subscribe, you're going to be able to get a better discount. But obviously, you'll see that we blast you on our intros, our outros, our intermissions, as well as all social media platforms. And next week, actually, I think we're going to start bringing to you platforms on Spotify and iTunes as far as just the vocal parts of the podcast, so you can listen to it while you're on the road or at the job site.
Right. Yeah, we're going to try to hit all platforms. Even things like TikTok and Instagram. We're just going to try to do clips and be live on, more audio-based systems, like you said, Spotify and iTunes. But today's guest, I don't know, you want to go ahead and introduce him?
Yeah, so we got one near and dear to our hearts, Tyler Carter. Would you come and join us over here on the Property Panel Podcast? Thank you for coming on today.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me today. So I know these boys as well as the back of my hand. I've been in real estate for the past 7 years. Started out more on the sales side of real estate, and the past couple of years I transitioned more into just a property management role for our office, and work with these guys, get to work with them super closely. So any of your property management stuff that you see come in and out of our office is usually through my hands here. So
what made you want to start real estate?
Well, honestly, me and Jalen, we go way back. So, and his mom's our broker here, and just seeing just how amazing Jennifer is, the way that she operates her business, I just always knew that's kind of where I wanted to go in life. So, kind of just always have rode their wave. So,
right. So you've done both property management and sales. Which one do you prefer, or which one do you like more?
They're just so different. Like, they're both different horses, and pretty much anybody that does property management will tell you that, like, when you're in property management, it is a completely different circus out there. Jalen knows too. I mean, he has done a little work with me in property management, so he knows the craziness that could come from it. So definitely different aspects to both beneficial to real estate, but definitely.
And we also know that you got quite the resume on your job history. As far back as, I think it was 2018, you went to Colorado to visit a RE/MAX out there?
Yeah, so I actually started real estate in a local company here, a smaller local company here. Did that for a couple of years, and then I moved to Colorado on a whim. You're young, you do what you want to do. So I moved to Colorado. Still wanted to keep the real estate in my mind, so worked at a real estate office out in Colorado. And then I moved back here, and we worked at a bigger brokerage, a more well-known brokerage. And then we decided to start our own, and been here ever since, and couldn't imagine it any different,
So what are your goals going into 2024 and the future for real estate property management? You got anything big on the table to tell us about?
I mean, I definitely think, making money for everybody, make money for myself, make money for the owners that I represent, any clients that I may have. That's what we're all here to do. So maximize our monies.
You got anything else to ask Tyler before we dive into today's topics?
Let's see. No, not right now.
So let's get into the age-old question, interest versus inflation. The two, they go hand in hand. A lot of people think that one is more important than the other, but I think that they steer on the wrong side of things when they decide which one is more important. Could you tell us a little bit about interest, Tyler?
Yeah, so interest, basically anything in life, and I'm sure everyone watching has already learned this. If anybody's going to give you anything in life, it ain't free. So interest is the bank's giving you the money, you're going to pay the bank back what's called interest for the loan. So that's what interest is.
What are some other fees that fall into that loan other than interest?
Yeah, so I mean, holding a loan isn't just the interest. You're also going to have utility costs, you're going to have your insurance costs, you're going to have your taxes. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm just paying my mortgage, that's all I got to worry about, and that's just not the case. We all know it's much, much, much more than that. And there's a ton of holding costs with anything like that.
Right.
So.
And is there any penalties for paying that off early, or is there benefits to paying that off early as well?
Definitely, I would say definitely check with your mortgage loan officer. The gentleman coming next week, I don't know if y'all have talked about them yet, but your next week gentleman will be able to tell you more about that. But some places I know have prepayment penalties and whatnot like that, but definitely.
And like you mentioned, next week we are going to have Chad Gooden and Garrett Greenwell with Supreme Lending coming on the show to discuss different loan types. So we're going to touch base on a few things to deal with loans and banks. But primarily, if you want to get a good in-depth discussion about that, tune in next week whenever we have them guys as guests.
That'll be a ton of good information.
Oh yeah, they're pretty well knowledgeable in their respective fields. So
yeah, Chad's good at what he does. But I guess let's go back to interest rates. So interest rates, they're always rising and falling. There's never really a set percentage. Right now it's around 7.25% to 7.5%. But it's always fluctuating. Let's see. Like back in 1972, it actually was 7% as well. And then shortly after in 1980, it went back up to 18%. So it's always fluctuating, and then 2019 and 2020 it was around 3%. That's something that we might not see again.
And we also, sorry to cut you off, but we got a demographic. Would you like to show them and kind of go over that with them while we discuss it?
Yeah, so as you can see right here, you can see the different years of what the interest rates were and how they've kind of stayed steady around that 7% over the span of a couple decades.
Especially right here between that 1995 to 2000, 2005, for a good solid 10 years, they was about at that 7.5 range. And now people are scared about the 8% range, but like we might mention later in the podcast, current rates are about at a 7.5, 7.25. And so I think that's about what they need to be on par for the economy to really thrive.
Right.
I think like what we often say in real estate, with interest rates, it's like anything. It's always a up and down type situation, but there's so many factors that go into it. Like a couple of years ago, you look back, we had COVID that happened. And so during that time, you see the way that our interest rates plummeted to, what were we saying, like 2.5, even low 2% interest rates. And I don't know if you're anything like me and a lot of those people that were buying during that time, you were so blessed to see that 2.5% interest rate. And I think that people got so stuck in their head that that's the best we're going to get, and that we got to have that interest rate, and it's just probably not going to happen for us like that again.
Not to that longevity. And I know that, like we mentioned, we was at about 8% or to 9% here recently at the max, and it started to have a slight decline. And interest rates, they're like a valley and a hill. They're going to go up and down, and that's where we get into inflation. And the key to inflation is that it's always going to go up. And Tyler, would you tell us a little bit about inflation?
Yeah, inflation is basically just, like I've said before, everything is affected by everything. So, you see trends, everything like that. You see your gas prices, they go up like crazy, they come back down like crazy. You see your grocery prices up like crazy, back down like crazy. It's just inflation, the way things work,
Yep.
Right. As far as housing inflation, too, it seems like if you look at that graph that we have, over time it's just constantly going up as far as average sales price in homes. So, when you're waiting for the market to dip, and it's kind of similar with interest rates, you really want to date the rate and marry the house. So find the house that you love if you plan on staying in it. And the rate will always change, and typically you have an option to refinance. But as far as inflation goes and housing prices, it's on a pretty consistent increase. if you bought 10, 20 years ago, you're double, tripling your home price. And for me, I got lucky and I bought back in 2019 before it really went up. And I actually bought it at a 3.5% interest rate, and it's probably about $50,000 to $80,000 more than I bought it for, just because those prices keep going up.
And like we had that graph pulled up as well on the inflation, I like to think of it as kind of like a stair step. So you seen the graph we pulled up earlier about the interest rates. They were up and down and all over the place. But as you can tell, the price of homes have constantly increased. We've only had one slight decline, and that was in the crazy market in 2008. And ever since, it's been on a constant incline. Like I said, it might taper off for a little bit, but that's why we call it a stair step, is because that's the best description. It's constantly on the rise, and I think that's where inflation beats out the interest. You can worry about what your interest rate is today, and that's, I tell a lot of people, date the rate, marry the house, because you can refinance, depending on your loan, it's typically about 180 days after you close that you can refinance. And like we mentioned last week, I had a client, they had just closed, and they was like at an 8%, and they was like, what's the current rate today? And I told them it's about, a 7.2, and they about had a heart attack. I was like, well, wait, according to some highly knowledge lenders that I've talked to, it's supposed to be on a decline. I was like, in 180 days, hopefully you can refinance for a lower rate. If not, it's still a lower rate than what your current rate is locked in at. So,
which I don't know what you all think about it, but I feel like if rates drop more and more, you might even see house prices go up again, just because people are going to be more interested in buying.
For sure.
So then you got that supply and demand. More people are going to probably get home loans if interest rates are lower.
Definitely. I remember I was selling a lot more back in the COVID times and like the 2020 time. And, around that time, if you were buying a house, you're going up against yourself and probably 20 other buyers at that time, because the rates were just so good. Like, you're basically paying no money to live in a house, so everybody was trying to buy. So the market was just so saturated with buyers. Now you're experiencing the market slow down a little bit. People aren't as, on top of everything. You're not seeing that multiple offer situation. So now I feel like you guys keep saying, date the interest rate, marry the house. Definitely follow suit. Now's the time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You just keep that mentality, and then obviously, as we'll go over later, you buy you a house, and when you refinance, you can pull the equity out, or you can do a HELOC. There's many different things that you can do with those loan types. Which, like I said, we got Chad and them coming on next week, so we will dive in deeper to those aspects of loans whenever they come on the air and can give us professional advice on that aspect.
Right. I'm going to have to get together a big list of questions for them, because they know a whole lot about that. Jay, what do you think about building a relationship with a local bank and how important that is as far as getting financed?
I think it's very important, especially in, like Tyler said, the competitive market. People were going outrageous amounts over appraised value and waiving inspections and whatever, and it was tough to compete in. And so whenever you do build those relationships at a young age with your local banks, especially in your local market, it's going to make a huge impact, because they can typically close quickly. They're going to have a lower monthly payment, so it's going to be better for your investment. And then building those relationships could also, in turn, help your business partners out and stuff down the road whenever you decide to expand your business.
Yeah, and going with a local bank, sometimes you're going to have less obstacles, especially when you're going conventional and 10 to 20% down. These government-backed loans, there's a lot of different, ins and outs to them that you have to overcome, and that's just another reason to build relations with the local bank.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay, what about hard money lenders? What is a hard money lender?
So hard money lenders, basically, if you can't establish those relations with those local banks, for various reasons, especially for us. So if you're like a 1099 independent contractor, you're going to need at least 2 years work experience to get approved for those typical type loans. So what I know a few investors do is they'll reach out to an individual or company that's not a bank, that's offering up lump sums of cash to flip these houses or use them as rentals. And basically what they'll do is use the house as collateral. They'll give them the funds to flip the house, and if they don't have it done in X amount of days, whatever their contract agreed upon, then they'll either get the house or they'll keep on tacking on more and more money. So whenever it does close, you'll make little or nothing. And then also you have pretty high interest. They're typically about 15 to 20% interest for those hard money loans. So I mean, it does in a pinch. If the property's worth it and it makes sense, maybe do it if you're not at that 2 year mark. But 9 times out of 10, I would recommend waiting to establish those connections and build relationships with those local banks.
And just to touch on down payment, what's a typical down payment percentage for some of these loans?
It depends, and those relationships help. With our current lender, we use quite a few depending on what flip or investment we're doing. But we've had them where they've done 100% funded, and then we've had them where they usually have us put 10 to 20% down. It depends on the investment and how profitable it is, because we obviously have to have some skin in the game to make a profit. So high risk but high reward in those circumstances.
I agree. All right. I guess you want to take a quick break before we go into our next topic, or do you want to keep going on the interest versus inflation?
Yeah, we can take a quick break. Basically, over the next segment, we're going to go over rent versus buying, property management. Tyler's going to kind of give a breakdown on what we have to offer at Cedar Hill and basically how that works on the property management side of things. Maybe tell you a few horror stories.
Ooh, I've got plenty to tell y'all.
Then towards the end of things, we're going to go over Q&A. So some questions we had from last week. Go ahead and drop some comments below in the break, and we'll get to those towards the end of the show and go over those with you guys. We do want to say hi to Cason Rhodes for tuning in, and happy Friday to Garrett Greenwell as well. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you
for sponsoring as well. We'll be right back. Thank you guys. Hello guys, coming back at you with the Property Panel Podcast. Of course, myself, Jalen Hardcastle, co-host Josh Story with surprise guest Tyler Carter. Thank you for tuning in today.
Of course.
And this next topic we're going to dive into is rent versus buying. Tyler, would you give us your thoughts on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of can speak to both sides of this as a property manager. I'm the one collecting the money every month from the tenants. And then, I've had years and years of sales under my belt as well. I will say, every month, if you are going to rent, every month you're going to give 100% of your payment to somebody, and that is just paying their bill for them,
Mm-hmm.
At least if you're buying, I always like to say buying is like a savings account for someone.
Yeah,
I know you think of it the same way,
Sure.
Buying a house is like a savings account. You're just putting that in there and, just let it build and build and build. If you're renting, you're spending all this money. It's never coming back to you. You're never going to see that money again. So
a lot of times you can't even put your own touches on the thing. So
right, for sure.
You're living in someone else's space. We're not putting it down by any means. So there are
for sure.
certain circumstances.
Definitely. There's a reason
beneficial.
for everyone that rents, plenty of people do it. And, not the best credit, income. There's a ton of factors that go into why you would need to rent over buy, but of course, if you do have the option to buy, for sure, I would probably go that route.
You gotta start somewhere.
The big difference there is building that equity. Like you said, once your lease expires in a rental, you're not really gonna get any of that money back. Whereas if you buy, most of that money is going towards your equity in your home that you can use later down the road, or when you go to sell your house, you have built up.
Like you said, a savings account. I think that's the best term for it because, you're paying on a little bit of interest, but it's 100% interest whenever you're renting a home. And even at the worst interest rate that we showed you earlier was at, I think, 18, 20%. It's a heck of a lot better than, what's the offer whenever you're renting. That money you're going to spend, say $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, whenever that's a hefty down payment. And you could be paying that off on your total mortgage.
Right.
Definitely. And I think that now we can probably talk about like what I do as fun as
what
property
do
management
you do,
is.
Ty?
Give all the viewers what they really want because they want to hear me yammer on.
Yeah, they want to hear the tall guy.
They want to hear the tall guy talk. So like I've said several times now, I started out as a real estate agent and kind of developed myself into this property management role. A property manager is going to oversee the entire function of a rental. So from marketing the house to screening the tenants, the background check, credit check, all that good stuff. We are, thoroughly checking our tenants. Any maintenance requests, we're taking care of those. Move in, move out inspections, anything like that. We really give the owners the option to sit back and enjoy their investment because that's what a property management should be there to do is allow you to have a little bit of peace with your investment. Let me handle all the stress and plenty.
And
there is plenty of it.
You're on your phone.
Y'all are gonna, it is definitely a full-time job. And like y'all will see, there are plenty of horror stories.
Yeah, we got
Towards the end of the podcast, we have some pictures where I'm going to slap up for y'all of one of my definite worst situations. Jalen's seen it, definitely been in the midst of it. So, as a property manager, we just rent out owners' homes, take care of it, so it's just easy for them,
So as far as your background checks, how extensive are those?
We here will take it very seriously and we'll take it very far to find out who you are. So don't ever think you're going to lie to us. We do have instances where people think they're going to not be fully truthful, but we're going to find out who you are. We definitely run the background checks. We're, the top of the line stuff for sure.
And so security deposits, do y'all have to keep those a lot of times? Or I know a lot of people are kind of, not wanting to put those up.
That's always one of the biggest buck ups that I get from people is, I'm going to give you this deposit, you're never going to give it back to me. The way it works is I'm not in the business to keep your deposit.
Right.
But unfortunately, if you're going to go into a house and trash it, that's just the way it's going to work. You're going to get your deposit kept. I will say, all the years that I've been doing property management, we hardly ever keep a deposit. Something to take into consideration when you are thinking about buying a rental is the wear and tear that can go into that rental. So
what things do you experience with that?
you're going to have paint scuffs. You're going to have things like that. That's just things that
That's
you're going to
common wear and
notice
tear.
when people are living there. A well lived in home is going to be well lived in,
Right.
so
So you're not going to hold it for
you're
that.
not going to hold somebody's deposit over something as
Right.
minor as that, but holes in the walls, things like that, more major things, we'll all keep it.
Whenever we bought our first house, when we lived in that together, actually, we put in all new floors and everything. And when we moved out 2-3 years later, I didn't realize that, how just the carpet alone, and then how just the weather will start warping.
For sure.
your
I mean, you
floors.
notice it in your own home. So, before you're buying these rentals and going into these investing situations, definitely keep a heavy mind on that, there are a lot of costs. Y'all know there's a lot of costs owning the home, and there's a lot of costs to owning a home and having someone else live in it,
So I know that people are talking about eviction and stuff, especially a lot after Corona. Have you had a lot of evictions?
I think that we are very blessed here because we take, like I said, our screening process, we take it very seriously, and we're not going to play no games. I will say that I've been very blessed, and I can count on one hand how many evictions I've ever had since I've been in property management. And I think that I can pride myself on just, I screen the crap out of my tenants. I'm not just going to let any Tom, Dick, or Harry move into a unit just to get it rented. So,
And probably half the evictions you had were due to
they're
emotional attachments.
Right. Or they, a situation we're going to see
friends.
later, this situation, it was not a fun situation at all, the home, you guys will see it later. It was probably north of like $60,000 to $70,000 worth of damages after we got in there, and we ended up selling that house. But definitely there is a ton of stuff that can go wrong.
You had to call, I think, the Humane Society or
there was that one wasn't like an animal hoarding situation gone wrong.
But that's the kind of stuff that the property manager has responsibilities of.
Exactly, and it's
takes that off the.
And it can always be the people that look so great on paper that are not the best tenants. Surprisingly enough, the person that was living there was a cleaner. You wouldn't think that, but that was their career. But cleaning didn't seem to be their strong suit to me. But you know what?
How much do you usually charge for property management?
So we charge 10% across the board. And in my eyes, 10% of the rents that we receive. So say $1,000 a month is the rent. We're getting $100. You're going to literally sit back as the owner and collect a check from me every month and have no worries whatsoever. I'm going to call you and let you know what's going on, but you're never going to have a worry.
You're handling the phone calls, the paperwork, the showings,
right?
The issues. If he needs to hire, an HVAC guy to go out, you're doing all of that.
Yes,
so
for sure.
They really get to take a back seat.
So, sorry to interrupt.
No,
what type of leases do you do? Is it beneficial to do a month to month, or do you want those long-term leases?
I think there's benefits to having a month-to-month lease, but here we definitely prefer to have someone on a 12-month lease just because that's more security for us. Right. Nothing usually ever longer than that, because anything longer than 12 months, it's in our market, prices are always ready to go up. So after a year, it's usually about time to raise rents. But
inflation's not just on home values, it's on market rent and other things. Like you said, even your bread and milk, it's supply and demand. And, we can't hate it. We just got to have to kind of live it and deal with it.
I think
together.
What a lot of people with rentals don't take into account from the owner's standpoint is whenever you have a tenant that's not paying their rent, an owner is still responsible to pay their mortgage. But unfortunately, you have a tenant there that's not paying that owner, you still are responsible to pay that mortgage every single month, unfortunately, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
And if you have a tenant there, then you are then responsible for paying a mortgage that you're not getting money back for. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely another thing to take into consideration before you were to make an investment like that.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you see, people with pets or landlords that don't allow pets? Is that something that's common, or?
That is kind of my whole problem is pets. I would say about half and half of our owners, allow pets and the other half are dead against pets. Personally, I'm like, if you're going to come to me and you're going to be honest with me and tell me, hey, I got a pet, I'm willing to pay the $300, $400 deposit plus the pet rent. Those are usually more your people that they're going to be more honest. I feel like you're coming to me, telling me from the get-go that you have a dog or whatever. I'm going to install a little bit of faith into you. But it's the people that don't tell you that they'll sneak a dog in there too. So
How often does that happen?
Not to me, honestly, very often. So
he has a good screening process, so it better.
Right.
But
I definitely think that's the added benefit of having a property manager.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right. Yeah, and he does a tremendous job. Obviously, we're gonna do a shameless plug, but he is one of the best in the area. He's renowned. Obviously they've bought other property management companies. They're going big time, and if you have anyone that's wanting to have us manage one of your properties, you can reach out to Tyler, and
Yes.
he'll get you squared away. But like he said, there are some nightmares that go into that as well. So
there is a ton of nightmares. People, like I was getting on something with the mortgage and the tenant's not paying. There's so many costs. They're doing that, and then you're gonna have to evict these people
Right.
after like the situation with the hoarding. Rent had not been paid. On top of you're going through the eviction process with this person. That's another cost going to court.
How much does that typically?
They're
cost?
usually about $600 to $700 per eviction. Putting that
Just-
on top.
just
These
to
are
knock
all
'em out, yeah.
right. These are all costs that you're gonna have. And probably never gonna be able to recoup. So definitely, I think it's. Yeah, eviction is that's why I always say it is so important that we do screen the way that we do, so we don't have to go through this in the end.
Avoid it as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like he said, the sellers, they still got to pay the mortgage whether the renters are paying their rent or not. So that's why we want to do an extensive screening process and do the best background check, rental history, and even these people are so sly that whenever I think a couple weeks ago we had someone put as a reference as their previous landlord, one of their friends, and luckily Tyler.
It was their sister, actually. Surprisingly enough, they had put down that they were renting from their sister, and we had reached out to her, and she was ready to go along for the whole story too. So. You really just have to know how to be a sleuth, and that's what we know how to be around here if we're going to find something out about you.
He'll search it up.
That's how you got to be. That's how much we respect our clients' investments, so we want to ensure that we have the best people in there for sure.
Is there any other stories that you want to tell us? Nightmares?
I think you might have some pictures for me to pop up.
Let's check them out.
So this was the rental I've been referencing throughout the video. Trigger warning, it is a hoarding situation there. There was fecal matter, several inches off the ground.
I heard you couldn't even open the doors. It was so...
You literally could
You couldn't
not.
see the floors.
We went in probably, like I said, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in damages.
As crazy as this picture is, the craziest part is what it looks like after you guys. That's just
Look at
night
that.
and day. Go back.
Run that back.
Yeah, let's do a little before and then after. Before, after, before. Goodness. And we had to climb in through the windows, if I remember correctly, to evict this tenant. Obviously, the sheriff's department, they'll come and meet us up there, but it was scary. And then, if I remember correctly, didn't you guys actually notice this was a problem, go back, totally renovate it? 6 months later, it was back the same.
Correct.
Shoot. Let's look at it one more time.
Right.
I think they literally seen dead animals floating through the bed. It was terrible. And
in the comments, we have a couple of questions. Someone asked, so you didn't do a background check on that one? Unfortunately, that one was an inherited tenant of mine. Mm-hmm. I never placed them because if I had placed them, it wouldn't have happened.
Right, but they did steal the truck.
Oh, yes, we do. We had
Tell them the whole story.
So, with property management, you really come across all walks of life. And it's just part of it, especially when you can get to the lower price pointed rentals, the $600 a month rentals. You definitely have to do some digging to find a good one at times. So we did have an instance where we had maintenance out at one of our rentals, and one of our tenants took it upon herself to steal our maintenance's truck and take the truck to the courthouse and
no
turn
way.
herself in. It was a whole situation. You know, it just goes to show that is why it is so important to screen your tenants, people. Because she also not placed by me, people. So if you're listening to this, I did not put her in that apartment.
He didn't place her. And then after she stole the truck, she drove it to the sheriff's office. You can't make this stuff
You
up.
truly cannot.
She drove it to the sheriff's office, and then I think assaulted a police officer, got arrested, come back, and our maintenance guy calls the police officer, gets picked up, and is like, "Oh, that's my truck. Oh, we just arrested that lady for assaulting a police officer."
So yeah, that's the kind of people that you can see, and that's why I think it's probably best to turn your property over to a property manager like me and let us handle the crazy, because there is plenty of it in it, you know. Just like with why you choose a realtor to represent you in any buying and selling transaction, you know, you guys have a wealth and world of knowledge for everyone. So, you know, that's what my profession is. You know, in and out all day long, property management, live, sleep, eat, breathe it. So that's why, definitely.
You know, especially if someone has multiple rentals, I feel like that can just be a handful, especially if you got, you know, full-time job or something else to do. Yeah, definitely would hire a property manager for that.
Did we ask you how long that your rentals typically stay available?
You know, with rentals nowadays, you all, just like the real estate market, the rentals go pretty quick.
I see your comments all the time.
Yes, I mean,
20 or so.
We post something online, it's gone within the week, usually a week to 2 weeks. So we definitely don't hang on to something for very long around
And you usually
here.
price them affordably. I know that there's some landlords that might try and get a little more. So what do you do in that situation?
I mean, just like you guys would run a CMA for your clients to give them a fair market value of a house, I'm going to do that.
Last week.
Right, there y'all go, plug your last week's episode. Go tune back into last week's episode, y'all, learn how to do a CMA.
He's about it.
So, just like you guys would do a CMA for that, I'm going to do the exact same thing for a rental to give it a fair market value. You know, I'm not just going to pull something out my butt and throw it on it.
Right.
So,
If someone's interested in a rental, how do they go about, you know, getting into one?
give us a call. You know, give us a call here at our office, or you can call me directly. You know, there's an application process, of course, that we've mentioned. So, definitely happy to walk anybody through that for sure.
Right.
So let's go over a few of the questions that we've had. So from last week, we had, I think a big question was the rate is an influencer on today's market value, but if they want to list above market value, like we mentioned, we prefer to list below market value, current market value, and I think Tyler can actually add into this because he was a realtor. What do you recommend, Tyler? Because that was a big question. I know a lot of people, and even on Marie, we listed it at $299, which we actually ran comps live on the air, ended up being $289, and we transferred that about a week ago, and we actually got an offer on it the other day.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I think that there's added benefits if you're willing to let it sit for a second and wait for that higher price point. I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that, but I mean, you noticed it. You put it right at where it needed to be, and it went under contract like that.
Right.
You know, I definitely think you see the way the market trends for sure.
I feel like really you just, either way, you need to be reactive. So if it is above and you're not getting any attention, then drop it.
Definitely.
Or, you know, you don't want it sitting for too long.
I mean, we do the same thing with rentals. You know, if I'm
Right.
not seeing anything, we're not getting any leads off of it. It's usually a good indication that my price is probably wrong. So might be a good time to stimulate it, knock that price down a little bit, see what that does for the market.
Another
you know?
thing I wanted to ask you, because I seen this on Facebook the other day, smoking in rentals. Do y'all allow it, or is it even allowed by the state?
Definitely not allowed, but you know, you can't really stop people from doing anything. That's why you hold their deposit. You know, if I see you're smoking it, I'm gonna get your deposit at the end of it. So
don't blame you there.
for sure.
We've seen some terrible ones, like when we was flipping that one property in Doe Valley. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean,
there was tar dripping down the windows.
How did you get rid of that smell?
Lots of
We
cleaning.
didn't.
lots of cleaning.
You tried your best.
We tried our best. We had the ducts clean. We had new service on the HVAC and everything, and it was just so stuck in, I guess, embedded into this house where they was the original
It'll
owners.
ruin a house for sure.
Right.
Definitely will ruin a house.
But yeah, I guess we're going to start closing out. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them. We're going to do a plug for next week. We're going to have Chad Greenwell.
Chad Greenwell, Garrett Gooden.
We're going to have Chad Gooden and Garrett Greenwell on the show. They're from Supreme Lending. They're one of our title sponsors, so they bring you the podcast. And then, like I said, weekly, we have our weekly sponsors, Custom Creations, for doing the laser engraving. Thank you for sponsoring.
Show them the back, too.
Yeah, we like that part especially. Cedar Hill Properties. And like I said, over the next few weeks, we're going to be upgrading our camera, upgrading our lighting. We have our lighting upgraded a little bit. We have a couple extra cameras, so, you know, if we have some guests come on, we'll come at you like that. But, no, we appreciate each and every one of you. You want to close out with the thanks to our sponsors?
Yeah, appreciate our sponsors. Shout out to Collier Title. Shout out to Supreme Lending, Chad Gooden and Garrett Greenwell. And then again, shout out to Kurt and Custom Creations.
Yep.
He's going to be making us some hats here soon, so we're looking forward to that.
See him on the air.
Hopefully some custom cups, kind of like this one. We're going to try to get Property Panel Podcast on there.
And on the hats.
And on the hats. So, yeah, thank you guys. And I guess tune in next week to see Chad and Garrett, and we're going to go over loan types, and we're going to have lots of questions there. And
that'll be a good one for people to tune into and discuss. I mean, even for sellers too, to understand the negotiation process, because we're going to go over sellers' concessions, buyers' concessions, what and what not to pay for on each end. I mean, obviously it's all negotiable, and I don't think people realize that either. But we also want to give a big shout out to Tyler Carter. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Is there anything you want to say before we tune off?
I hope you all enjoyed having me, and I hope you enjoyed my fun pictures that I had to bring, you know, and I hope you could probably smell them from where you are. So.
Yeah, well, we thank you guys. We're going to tune out, and thanks to our closing sponsors, and we'll see you next week at 5 p.m. with Chad and Garrett.
thank you guys.